Have you ever dreamed of starting your own podcast? Well, you can. It's simple, it's easy, and best of all, it's free. By going to anchor.fm, you can start your own podcast today and have your own show up and ready to go. Anchor's graphic user interface is user-friendly, and you get paid for your content by setting up a Stripe account. Go to anchor.fm. Again, that's anchor.fm, and start your podcast today. Welcome to the Living Healthy Podcast, where you can improve your quality of life by making solid and informed decisions. I'm your host, Eddie Randall. Welcome back to the Living Healthy Podcast. Tonight's episode is entitled Living Healthy, Embracing Sustainability, and Addressing Climate Change. Now, I decided to address sustainability and climate change in regard to living a healthy life. In order to live healthy, a big part of that is having a healthy environment to do it in, whether it's our generation or generations to come. How we treat our planet is just as important as how we treat our bodies. Think of your body as a strong, healthy, budding plant. You wouldn't take that strong, healthy, budding plant and place it in soil that's diseased or has been depleted of nutrients. You'd want to have the best soil possible in order to give the plant the best chance it has to survive and thrive. Climate change can affect that plant as temperatures rise and soil erosion occurs, which can affect the plant's ability to draw water and nutrients from the soil. Now, climate change affects our health as global warming creates air and water pollution. This exacerbates illnesses like asthma and can predispose people to lung illnesses. The Center for Disease Control, on their website, they state that climate change affects health as disruptions in biological and ecological systems can increase respiratory disease. As temperatures continue to rise, cardiovascular disease can increase as well. People can become dangerously predisposed to heat stroke. Also, people who live in areas that are already extremely hot will begin to suffer from cardiovascular ailments due to heat stress. The National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences states that ozone formation due to higher temperatures impedes pulmonary gas exchange, causing stress on the heart, which can result in a heart attack. Warmer temperatures lead to flooding and more extreme weather conditions like hurricanes and rainstorms. As the ecosystem changes, water quality and waterborne illnesses can also take place. On the Environmental Protection Agency's website, they list erosion, sedimentation, and harmful algal bloom as problems that water quality faces in regard to climate change. So not only is sustainability and climate change important to our health, what we do now will also affect the health of generations to come. Now, everyone's talking about going green, sustainability, and saving the planet. We have more people alive right now than at any time in the history of the world. Climate change is something that we all are responsible for, and it's something we can all do something about. Now, greenhouse gases like methane and carbon dioxide contribute to the greenhouse effect, which is the warming of the Earth's atmosphere. A major contributor is the burning of fossil fuels. This causes the Earth to warm up at an exponential rate. When the energy from sunlight enters the Earth's atmosphere, it comes in as light, ultraviolet radiation, and infrared radiation. However, when energy leaves the Earth, it leaves in the form of infrared radiation, and infrared radiation reflects off of greenhouse gases, causing the Earth's atmosphere to get warmer. Now, this gradual increase in warming causes the temperature to rise. In return, glaciers in Antarctica and Greenland are melting. The result is sea levels that are gradually rising, and unfortunately, industrialization contributes to global warming and the greenhouse emissions as well. On worldwildlife.org, they state that the Industrial Revolution has caused glaciers to rapidly melt. The website also states that 95% of the oldest Arctic ice has already melted. Sustainability. In recent years, sustainability has become more of a predominant topic. I believe this coincides with people learning and having more access to information on taking care of themselves. More organic and whole food items and products are beginning to have a label marked as sustainable. Some people who may have never thought about the environment or our ecosystem before have been introduced to it through health awareness and accountability of manufacturers. What is sustainability? Well, sustainability is the use and preservation of resources in order to maintain ecological balance. The EPA describes sustainability as coexisting in harmony with nature to provide for current and future generations. The importance of sustainability is this: as the population increases around the world, adjustments need to be made in order for all of us to live in this world and to not deplete it of its resources. Sustainability often encompasses using renewable energy, recycling, minimizing the carbon footprint, and eating sustainable foods. It is important to consider these things because each action that someone takes affects other people. The importance of the impact of sustainability goes beyond words, and it centers around the actions that we all take. There are 3 pillars of sustainability: the social, economical, and the environmental pillar. Starting off with the social pillar of sustainability. This is a standard where all people have equal rights in a society and have a say-so in practices which will make them a good neighbor to each other and a good global neighbor. This is to ensure that everyone has adequate resources and that everyone has access to those resources. In many instances, this goes hand in hand with fair trade. Now, fair trade is a label that is making its way onto many food products, particularly produce. Now, fair trade is where a standard of living can be achieved by smaller countries or economically disadvantaged countries. This is just to make sure that they cannot be taken advantage of and that they're also protected against market fluctuations. This addresses safe working conditions and accountability for societal business practices. The economical pillar. The economical pillar is about profitability in order to generate revenue to sustain the business. Now, this includes the product or products, processing, manufacturing, distribution, maintenance, and recycling. The business must comply with government standards, humane business practices, as well as shareholders' wishes. The environmental pillar. Now, this pillar focuses on limiting environmental impact. This can be in accordance with all natural resources. As an example, some sardine cans have a sustainably caught label on their can. It is self-explanatory, but in order for that company to have that label, they need to practice and run their company in a way that does not deplete the population and complies with government environmental standards. Our role in sustainability. We all have a role to play, even though it may not seem significant. It really is, as every action we take contributes to our planet. Think of it this way. Each person's role in sustainability is analogous to saving pennies. It may seem trivial and tedious, but over time the pennies add up and the value becomes exponential. Our role boils down to coexisting, all while limiting our carbon footprint. The carbon footprint. Everyone has a carbon footprint, and for the last 20 years or so, there's been a lot of talk about this subject along with climate change, fossil fuels, and future generations. A person's carbon footprint is the amount of carbon dioxide emitted in the use of fossil fuels. A general example of a carbon footprint would be a company and its use of electricity to power computers, equipment, and lighting, and the fuel used for transportation by its employees. This could be anything from a hospital to a grocery store. Whatever it is, it will have a carbon footprint. On a personal level, some of the major things that our carbon footprint is measured by is driving, use of electricity, eating meat, eating locally produced foods, and recycling. When I mentioned eating meat, that doesn't mean if you only eat vegetables, you'll save the world. The argument is that the amount of fodder that it takes to feed a cow is huge compared to the amount of meat it will produce. This does, however, make being a vegetarian a better choice if you are very, very concerned for your carbon footprint. On the University of Michigan's website, they have a Center for Sustainable Systems webpage with a carbon footprint fact sheet. They state that meat products have a higher carbon footprint per calorie than vegetables due to the inefficiency of converting plant energy to animal energy. However, as I have stated in my last podcast on the 8 most popular diet plans, being a vegetarian, you may have to get vitamin B shots, and there are a lot of protein and benefits that we gain by eating meat. Aside from that, no offense to vegetarians, I love you guys, but sometimes well-cooked seasoned meat just tastes downright good. I wanted to take a moment to say thank you for supporting the podcast. The Living Healthy podcast is listed on many platforms, including Anchor, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Bullhorn, and many others. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. And don't forget to check out the Living Healthy podcast channel on YouTube. Also, if you have any questions or would like me to discuss a particular topic, or you'd like to be a guest on the show, please contact me at livinghealthy@gmail.com. Things we can do to promote sustainability and minimize our carbon footprint. As individuals, we can all play a part in minimizing our carbon footprint and trying to make the world a better place for future generations. The things we can do are not overly difficult, they just require obtaining knowledge on climate change and applying simple changes to our daily lives. One of the easiest ways is to cut down on driving. Cars are one of the biggest contributors to greenhouse gases. According to the Environmental Protection Agency's website, they state that a typical passenger vehicle can emit 4.6 metric tons of CO2 per year. Alternative modes of transportation include walking, biking, and even driving green by seeking electric car options. Carpooling and public transportation are also options. However, amid the COVID-19 pandemic, you may want to weigh your options. Even being vaccinated, there are variants of the virus to be mindful of. Going paperless is another way you can minimize your carbon footprint. You can also increase your security by doing this, as not having mail delivered decreases your chances of having your identity stolen. An added bonus to this is that you can save on the postage of the bills that you would have mailed out. Trees can also be saved, as there would be no need for the bill to be sent out to you, as everything would be online. According to GoPaperless.com, going paperless limits the need for sending and receiving bills, as well as the utilization of ink cartridges. They also state that the EPA has estimated that over 400 million ink cartridges are placed in landfills every year. When I was in college, I wrote so many papers and so many lab reports, I never ever thought about the impact on the environment. I mean, I had to write the papers and the lab reports regardless, but learning this fact really puts things in perspective when you think about climate change. Another option to help with climate change is to donate old, unused clothing. Aside from helping underprivileged people, which is always a great thing to do, you're not adding items that can still be used to landfills. Some fibers are dangerous, and when they break down in a landfill, they can release toxic chemicals. Other fibers don't break down over time, and they pile up as more and more are added to the landfill. On GoGreen.com, they state that many clothing lines have items that will never break down, and serious harm to the environment can occur as these items continue to pile up. Recycling plastic and cardboard have always been a huge concern, particularly for the last 20 years, and this movement is steady gaining more momentum in light of climate change. Most, if not all, cities have recycling as a principle in regard to waste management, providing separate bins for refuse and one for plastic and cardboard to minimize the impact on landfills. Plastic bags are typically not biodegradable due to being petroleum based. There are plastic bags that are made of plastic that can break down. However, more often than not, before these bags can break down, they end up getting in places that they were not meant to go and end up harming animals that mistake them for food. Or these animals get tangled in them and suffer an injury. The ones that are biodegradable often take years to break down, and when they do, they're also found in places that they shouldn't be. For instance, when these particles break down, they end up becoming microplastics that end up in the ocean and in drinking water. Now, paper bags are not that much better in that they take more natural resources to produce than plastic bags, and they're made from the primary tool that aids in fighting pollution: trees. Trees take in carbon dioxide and release oxygen, and it goes without saying how vital trees are for human survival. The best way to fight against this is to use cloth bags that you can wash and reuse whenever you go shopping. You can also stop using plastic plates, plastic cups, and plastic silverware. Use cloth towels instead of paper towels and napkins. Other ways to help cut down on greenhouse emissions is to downsize by occupying a smaller living space. By occupying a smaller living space, it'll cut down on cooling and heating costs by using less electricity. On the EPA's website, they state that most of the electricity produced in the United States is done with natural gas and coal. By downsizing, you can do your part by emitting a smaller carbon footprint. Now, if you don't want to downsize, or it's simply not feasible due to your family size, then you can simply weatherproof your home. You can replace windows and doors with new ones, and you can replace thresholds to make sure that energy is saved. You can also put in a thermostat that has an energy saving mode. You can check your ductwork and replace any that need replacing or that can be leaking, that could be leaking air. If you're inclined to do so, you can limit the use of your air conditioner and utilize your ceiling fans instead. I did not realize this, but air conditioning is a huge contributor to greenhouse gases. Chlorofluorocarbons were used in air conditioning as a refrigerant, and it was discovered that this wreaks havoc on the ozone. It was replaced by hydrofluorocarbons, which are bad as well. And the EPA's website, they state that the current hydrofluorocarbon refrigerants like R22, that they're going to get replaced, they're going to get phased out by something more environmentally friendly. You can replace your halogen bulbs with LED bulbs. They're more efficient and they last longer. This makes them cost effective and they use less electricity, which reduces carbon. Unlike the CFL bulbs, they do not contain mercury and have no harmful chemicals that can pollute the environment. You can incorporate the use of a timer system or motion detectors that use LED lights on outside home lighting, as that is also a great way to cut down on greenhouse gases. Saving water is another responsible thing that can be done in regard to climate change. Reducing water waste will reduce carbon emissions as it will require less energy to deliver water into homes. Watering on designated days and only using the dishwasher when full is also another great way to help. Additionally, you can wash clothing only when you have a full load. You can also use a water-saving shower head or low-flow shower head, or simply take shorter showers. There are even low-flow toilets that you can have installed. A novel idea would be to collect rainwater. Many places were rewarding people for saving rainwater as it cuts down on water usage. Until recently, it was illegal in Colorado to collect rainwater, even on your own property. In some states, the rainwater is actually cleaner than the water provided by the city, but that just depends on where you live. If you decide to collect rainwater for consumption, just make sure that you have a clean and suitable collection system. Rainwater can become contaminated with things in the environment. Now, depending on the type of collection system you want, some can cost as little as a few thousand, all the way up to the price of a small car. Eating sustainably is another great way to help the environment. As I stated earlier, it goes hand in hand with fair trade as a way to ensure ethical work practices, healthy eating, and staying environmentally friendly. As part of this, you can eat locally. Not only will you support your fellow men and women who work in your community, you'll minimize the overall carbon footprint due to the food being local, thereby cutting down on the need to have it shipped to stores in your location. Many people cannot raise their own chickens and cows, but many can grow their own vegetables. Growing your own vegetables can lower your carbon footprint and is ideally the model of the definition of eating sustainably. Not only will you be self-sufficient, at least in regards to vegetables, but you can perfect this skill or just feel better about yourself knowing that you know how to grow your own food. As far as what you can eat in a sustainable lifestyle, you can eat leafy vegetables, beans, fruits, rice, lentils, sardines, olives, and fish like mackerel, tuna, salmon, and cod. These are all examples of sustainable food items. Even chicken can be considered sustainable in comparison to red meat. Make sure that you look for labels like eco-friendly, sustainable, free-range, farm-raised, no antibiotics, no fillers, USDA organic, non-GMO, product verified, free-range, and fair trade. Of these labels, some of the most common when it comes to sustainable food will be a label marked sustainable and a label marked fair trade. Again, these companies and the workers in the country or countries of origin are not taken advantage of, and they are a company dedicated to producing sustainable food. Eating seasonally as well is also a great way to help the environment. Every fruit has its particular season due to the climate and time of year when the fruit is naturally produced. Due to the times we live in where everything is I want it now and on demand, and with some companies willing to provide all in the name of profit, we developed the society we have today. However, eating seasonally lowers the global impact by limiting the emissions through growth, production, and transportation. On eatright.org, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, there's an article called Sustainable Eating. It states that blueberries do not grow in Montana in January, but you can still buy them there because they're shipped to that location from far away. Eating less meat is also a great way to minimize the impact of greenhouse gases. What it boils down to is that the resources to raise cattle in comparison to the amount of meat produced is not commensurate in a tangible sense. I think people should make sensible, personal decisions about meat consumption in regard to greenhouse gases and climate change. The reason I say this is because, of course, it's a personal choice, but meat contains so many benefits to the human body, especially if an individual suffers from a health condition warranting substantial amounts of protein. There is an article on trifectanutrition.com by registered dietitian Emmy Satrazimis called Plant Protein versus Animal Protein, Which is Better? She wrote the article in February of 2019, and she states that as far as nutrition is concerned, plants are less protein dense in comparison to their meat protein counterparts. If you do feel guilty about eating meat, you can eat chicken and fish and have that as your protein meat source, as chicken and fish have less of a carbon footprint in regard to production and transportation. Now, fresh fish are leaner than farm-raised fish, but farm-raised tend to have more omega-3 fatty acids. Although fuel has to be used when fishing, its use has a smaller impact on the environment. As mentioned, eating chicken has a smaller impact on the environment. Chickens do not exactly require the amount of resources to be maintained as their cow counterparts. On the environmentalworkinggroup.org website, they state that chickens require less feed but require more water usage in comparison to cattle. They have a graph that illustrates that chickens generate 6.9 kilograms or 15.2 pounds of carbon dioxide for every kilogram or pound eaten. Cows generate 27 kilograms or 60 pounds of carbon dioxide for every kilogram or pound eaten. Either way you look at it, chicken and fish are an alternative to a lower global impact. I wanted to address climate change because I consider myself a man of science, and undeniably the world is changing. No matter what happens, there is science behind it. Every function of life has a chemical reaction. Unfortunately, some of these chemical reactions contribute to the depletion of our ozone layer. That's going to do it for this episode of the Living Healthy podcast. I want to thank you all for listening, and I want to thank you all for your continued support. And remember, living healthy creates a better you.